logic of CSRF and where CSRF is really required, and why in a Spring Boot perspective, we don't need to enable the CSRF. Complete details we discussed in the last class. Okay. As of now, before I proceed further, anyone has any questions here? As of now, before I proceed further, anyone has any questions?
I couldn't run the program, sir.
What is the error you are getting, sir?
I'm not able to run that program at all.
My question is, what error you are getting?
Error, error, error. I couldn't understand that. Or that it's running. I went through the code actually, but I couldn't understand the code flow also.
If you're not able to understand the CSRF code flow, you mean to say that?
Yeah.
CSRF, sir, it is a POC. It is not Spring Boot code. It's a normal Spring MVC code, sir. Okay. Just I gave an example. This is a CSRF vulnerability. Okay. It is a Spring MVC. You need to have an idea of Spring MVC. Now I got it's a Spring MVC idea, and you can easily run the code. You need to create a database. You need to create the schema, and you need to create the tables also. Okay. But you don't need to worry about that. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other? Anyone? Okay. Now, today, what is my next point is, sir, by default, whenever we hit any URL, first time we are hitting the URL. Okay, first time we are hitting the URL, it is going to redirect the page to login page. We have seen that, right? A customized login page or our own login page, whatever it may be. But as part of Spring Boot is concerned, it's a middleware and it can connect with any of the front end. It can connect with any of the front end. Am I right? So by default, a Spring Boot is a middleware. It can connect with any of the front end. Either it can connect with Angular front end, React front end, Node.js, or any of the front end. So the question I have is, can they inject the username? Can they inject the password on the JSP page? Because whenever I run the code, it is giving me a JSP page, right? Java page, a login Java page it is giving me, right? Where I'm going to give user ID as well as password. As I'm using temporarily for my POC, I can run on the browser. I can do that. But in a real-time integration perspective, I will enter my user ID as well as my password, like Naresh IT admin, Naresh IT admin, Naresh IT guest, Naresh IT guest, something like all these details, Naresh IT admin, Naresh IT admin, Naresh IT guest, Naresh IT guest. These details typically given by, okay, these details are typically given by Angular page or React page. But if I give those values on Angular screen, can they inject the user ID? Can they inject the password on my JSP page, which is highly impossible? Someone asked me a question, sir, if I hit this from Postman, okay, can I get the response? Somewhere Postman also should ask me username and password, right? Where I can fill that. So by default, form login is the command. Okay, what I'm telling here, please disable the CSRF. Any request which is matching with this URL, who is having admin role access it. For example, we don't know we don't know if he's first time logged in. Form login is the command, or form login is the verb, okay, which will redirect to, which will prompt login page in Java, which will prompt the login page in Java. But when I enter any user ID password on the Angular screen or React screen, they cannot inject the data. When I enter some user ID as well as password, they cannot inject the data. So the other alternative, so form login we cannot use when your middleware can connect to any front end. Form login I can use only if my Java front end is there. Form login I can only take if my front end is Java, JSP, where it will read the authentication object, authorization object. But if my front end is not a Java framework, any framework, I cannot choose form login. In place of that, in place of form login, we can use basic authentication. Basic authentication. Basic authentication, it's an approach. Basic authentication, it's an approach, okay, where we have a common section in the HTTP request. Within the HTTP request, we have a common section. Okay, the common section will be HTTP header. HTTP header is the common section. Okay, what Spring Boot is asking is any front end, either Angular, React, Node.js, Postman, any tool, what they need to do, they will update the user ID and password to HTTP header object. HTTP header object is there available in the HTTP request. There is a common section which is header. Okay, we need to update to the HTTP header. How we need to update HTTP header? In HTTP header, we are having header name should be authorization. This is a header name we need to keep. Authorization is a header name we need to keep. And value should be encrypted user ID colon password. We need to encrypt the user ID colon password. Header name is authorization and the value should be user ID and password that is separated by colon. And it's not a plain text, you should encrypt it. So whenever, what happens here? When I log in my ticket booking application from any Angular or any Node.js or React, by default, they will log in. They will enter Naresh IT admin, Naresh IT admin. Now, is Naresh IT admin is the correct username? is Naresh Shetty admin is the correct password. How who will verify? Spring Boot will verify. Angular or React will submit that user ID, will submit that password in the HTTP header. In which format? Header name is authorization and value should be username as well as password. So, for example, if we are encrypting, okay, if we are using encryption, if we are using encryption with Spring Boot library, we use basic keyword. So I'll explain this. While during testing. You can ignore that. As of now, what I'm explaining is by default form login is the approach. We can only use, okay, form login only used for prompting or only used for a front end which is connecting to Java framework only, Java front end only. Okay. Now, whereas if we use basic authentication, any framework, including Java, also a common framework, it will work. So it's an approach. We have a common section in the HTTP request in the HTTP header is a common section. Any front end, they need to update the user ID as well as password in the HTTP header. In the HTTP header name is what? Authorization is a header name, and the value should be user ID colon password. That's a password. Okay. And if you are using encrypted or all, I'll explain that during testing. Okay. So how we need to write a code here? I will comment this code. Okay. Because I don't want to use form login. I want to use using dot HTTP basic. HTTP basic is the verb or is the command to use basic authentication. Okay. So same keyword instead of form login, I used HTTP basic. Here also, I'm going to use here HTTP basic. Okay. So then anyone can connect to this particular front end. Any front end connect to this particular Spring Boot. Any front end, they can connect using this particular Spring Boot. Okay. As of now, anyone has any questions, guys, on this? As of now, someone who is asking the question, the complete voice is breaking. We are not able to hear anything from you.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, sir, one question I have. Actually, HTTP basic and form login. So, form login we need to use when we are developing Spring MVC kind of application.
Correct.
Then we use form login, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
If you are going,
Not only Spring MVC, not only Spring MVC,
yeah,
JSP, Servlets, any Java framework. That's the only point.
yeah, when we are going for the different port like Angular, React, we are calling the things by API. Then we need to use HTTP basic, right?
Correct. And no, HTTP basic work with Java also,
Okay.
but form login will not work with Angular or React. What is the problem? If at all form login is there, it will open a JSP page. Can
Okay.
Angular can inject the data into JSP page? No. Can
No.
React can integrate? It will not do that, right? That's why a common framework is given. Basic authentication. What they need to do, any framework can use the can inject the username and password in the HTTP header, which is common for everyone. So any programming language can insert the data.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sir, are you able to hear me okay?
Now I'm able to hear. Now I'm clear.
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you. So since this basic authentication can work even for the Java, I mean, which is across everyone.
Correct.
So is there any other advantage of using form login at all, which is over basic authentication, which can't do?
I mean, basic authentication will do everything. There is no limitation on the basic authentication.
Okay.
There is no limitation on the basic authentication.
So
Yeah.
in real time, so just generally, like since it have a extendability across many other front ends, so generally people use basic authentication
Correct.
rather than the form login. Okay,
Form login,
that's-
no one will use actually. Yes.
Okay.
Just I explained in the beginning of the example, and I don't want to complex your brains with a lot of concepts. I'm teaching one by one, but in real time, no one will use form login. Mostly it will be used in HTTP basically. Yeah. Any other? Everyone is clear, right, guys?
Yes.
Okay. Now I'm going to run the code now. That's it. I've just yeah. Now I got the data here. Now ticket controller. First we will test with browser. Then we'll go to Postman. Anything should work, right? First let me test with browser. And then we'll go with Postman. Sir, will browser work here? Because browser will JSP page is there, browser will inject. But here, if browser is going to work over here? Yes, it will work. 1 second, yes, it's loading some time. So this is my API. Localhost 8080 tickets/all. Now you see here. It is prompting a pop-up. Now there is no login page now. Whenever we use basic authentication, browser is internally, I mean, it is throwing a pop-up. Who is throwing this? Our Tomcat server will throw this, a pop-up. This pop-up is given by Tomcat server. Okay. What does this pop-up indicates? Anyone can inject. Now this pop-up is used for, because I cannot create a HTTP header using browser, right? Can I create HTTP header from browser? I cannot do that, right? So framework is giving a pop-up where you can enter the username as well as password in the pop-up, and the pop-up will internally give the data to the postman. Not to the postman. It is giving the data to Spring Boot in the form of HTTP header. Okay. Now, if I say here, Naresh IT admin, Naresh IT admin. Now it gives all the data. For example, now it's giving a pop-up. Naresh IT guest, Naresh IT guest. Now I'm clearing the console here. You saw forbidden error, right? Guest cannot access all the tickets, right? Can guest can access all tickets? No, right? It's a forbidden access. It is given.
Yep.
So on a browser, you need to understand first. Whenever browser is there, from browser we cannot prepare a HTTP header in the HTTP request. In the HTTP request, we cannot give the username and password, and we cannot form the HTTP header. For that, Tomcat is giving a browser, or it's giving an option to give a pop-up, and that pop-up will give you the data or give you option where you will enter username and password, and framework will internally inject like authorization as header name, value as username colon password in the encrypted format. So that Spring Boot will verify, is this username, is this password correct or not? If it is correct, then it will check the authorization, and if its authorization is good, then it will execute the code. Otherwise, it will skip the code. Now you saw forbidden error where Naresh IT guest cannot access all tickets method. They can only access individual ticket method. Okay. Now, can we see Postman now, guys? Everyone, as of now, browser is clear to everyone. Can we see Postman now? Sir, everyone is following me clearly, right, sir? As of now. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Guys, if anyone not able to follow, please ask the question immediately so that I will explain till you follow. Okay. But after few classes are over, sir, I was not able to understand. My net is not working. I'm busy with some other activity. My charger is gone. Some XYZ reasons. Don't tell me and don't ask me. Okay. Right. Now here, my API is HTTP localhost colon 8080 ticket slash all where I need to go to authorization. Here you are seeing the tab, right? Authorization tab, where you will see basic auth. You are able to see that basic auth? Yes or no? I am seeing a basic auth. Here it's asking me username and password. Something like browser is giving a pop-up. Postman is created this pop-up. Okay. Now Naresh IT guest, sorry, Naresh IT admin, right? Naresh IT admin, Naresh IT admin. Okay. Now you'll see here. You're able to see here. One second. You're able to see here. Automatically framework is giving HTTP header section, authorization as username colon password in an encrypted format. Are you able to understand anything from here? This is Naresh IT admin colon Naresh IT admin, which is converted, which is encrypted using basic authentication, base 64 library. We call that as a base 64 crypto system, which is encoding, means converting a plain text into non-understandable format. Are you able to understand anything here on the authorization as a header name plus basic plus some characters are there? Will you able to understand nothing? So in the similar way, framework is converting the username as well as password option. It will be in an encrypted format. It's going to be an encrypted format. It will encrypt the username as well as password. Then it is going to take care of authorization as a header name. Okay. Makes sense as of now. This is I didn't formed it actually. Like how browser is giving me the facility, Postman also give you the facility. Just like what you need to do here, you need to go to authorization. You need to select basic authentication here. You need to select basic authentication here, where you will see username as well as password. And I gave Naresh admin. And if you see here header, where you can see authorization as header name and basic is the keyword, which is indicating that it username password is encoded with the basic 64 algorithm, and basic 64 algorithm only we can decode that. Okay, it's not a plain text, so that no network hacker cannot do anything on this. So initial request is kindly accepted and it is used for authentication and authorization, so that it will be typically useful at the first step only, that is called as authentication as well as authorization. If I already enter into the application, I may have some restrictions. I cannot access this, I cannot access that, right? So you can control fine grain authorization through fine grain authorization. That means, what do you mean by fine grain authorization? Means if the user is having that role and that role is having that option, then only you can allow. Otherwise, you cannot allow. Something like that. So this is a typically authorization as a header name. Basic is the keyword, which is mainly useful for encrypting the data to the framework understandable point of view, which is equal to basic plus there is a space, and there internally basic plus some username and password, both are available in this string and which is submitted at springboot side. So that completely everything will be connectivity is going to happen from user ID to password as well as password to some other place. This is a typical introduction about basic authentication. Is that clear? So can we execute the code, guys, now? As of now, everyone is clear? Okay. Now I'll execute the code. You saw here, error came, right? You saw error came. Sorry, I'm sorry. You saw response came, isn't it? For example, I'm changing Naresh IT admin 111222. It changed the password here. You saw here, unauthorized. You gave a wrong username. You gave a wrong password. Who is doing that encoding to decoding, decoding to encoding? Base64 library of Spring Boot has base64 jar. It understands this particular string and what is the username, what is the password in this string, and it will check and it will compare. Okay, so by default, whenever you enter wrong user ID, wrong password, also it is capturing your authenticity, and you can enter into application only if your authenticity is success. Otherwise, we cannot proceed further. Yes, someone is asking question. Actually, they unmuted actually. Afia, you have any question actually? Okay.
No, sir. No.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Now we'll check about authorization. Okay. Ticket/all. I'm telling Naresh IT guest. Does all ticket method as a guest? No, right? He doesn't have a access, right? My user ID password is correct, but I cannot access all tickets method. Is that correct? You saw forbidden error. You saw forbidden, right? I didn't encode it here. Postman wrote a code here, not Spring Boot. Postman wrote a code and they are sending username as well as password in an encoded format. That's a Postman write a code here. And Spring Boot framework will decode it using base64. On successful decoding, you will get username : password. If I separate, first string will be username, second string will be password, so that things will be go smooth. So where we can see end-to-end execution, end-to-end execution with Angular frontend, which is connecting to UI, and that UI is connecting to my framework. Okay, so construction of a page, encoding the username as well as password in a separate encoding pattern, either base64 or RSA or SHA-256. Lot of algorithms are available here where we can choose our own algorithm, and we need to update this particular algorithm to, because framework easily understand which algorithm it is prepared, so that you don't need to worry about done which algorithm. So basic is a keyword which is going to help us where that particular framework is completely developed in Java, and just if at all if you are looking any kind of on that support, that framework will give you that support. So that is a typical introduction about form login versus HTTP basic. What do you mean by HTTP basic? Means converting the username : password in a plain text format. In a plain text format, converting the username as well as colon, and it is not clearly converting the username as well as password using base64 which is done by the Postman or any other front end, and Spring Boot will read the data and it will inject the data and will check the authenticity as well as authorization, and they can proceed further on this particular topic. Okay, sir, is it clear, everyone? Any questions so far as of now?
So this topic is very clear, but I had a one question which is next to it. If
Yeah,
I
please.
can ask our
Please,
sure.
yeah.
So in this case, right, the user is not providing any key at all. I mean, it's like, for example, it's like it's using, as you said, it's using standard base 64 job, and the both on client side and the server side. So in that context, if anyone have this value, what you highlighted there, the basic after basic here, so they can also decrypt, right? So because all the Unix systems
How
will
they
have
can
base
have,
64.
how they can get this value?
Yeah.
You need to know.
If
Mhm.
yeah.
No,
Go for
there
it.
should be a way, right? No, I'm got. There should be a way how we get a value. For example, I know your Gmail user ID. I know your Gmail password. Can I access?
Yeah. Yes.
Unless until if I know your username, if I don't know of your username and password, I cannot access. Now, encoded value, how you can access? How you can get the value first?
I mean,
Because
this my assumption was yeah, okay, this header will be passed anyway through the HTTP packets. If anyone
correct.
capture the packet, they should see
No,
the other.
no. Header cannot be captured in any part of the package. It's not. We are only sending. Okay, and in anywhere you will not get this particular string. It's
Yeah.
purely hidden. Okay.
Sure.
As of now, in Postman, I'm able to see because it's a free flow text, right? And a Postman, because I need to enter, right?
Yeah.
In Postman, we need to enter the data. That's why it is you're able to see in real time. You cannot enter, you will enter the data in the Angular screen only. That's it, or React screen only, username and password. After that is everything in the background only. You will never see that encrypted string.
Sure. You meant to say that in the browser, let's say we do the same operation in the browser. If we open a that F12, the dev tools,
Correct.
even in there, you can't see the header values.
Nothing. You
Sure.
cannot see that. Yes, 100%. If that is the thing, then why we need to do all these things? Right? We don't need to do that, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's where I was.
Yeah.
I was
No
with you.
issues. No, yeah. No, are you clear? I guess, right? Yes. Any other question, guys, so far? So form login is the one approach. HTTP basic is another approach. In both the cases, in-memory authentication is sufficient, but mostly in real time, everyone use in-memory authentication for with the combination of HTTP basic. Okay. When you design a Spring MVC with Spring Boot as a middleware, then in that case, I can use CSRF or Java framework or basic authentication with the form login, all those things I can use. But if I want my middleware to be generic, it can work with any front end. Then one of the option we have is basic authentication. What is basic authentication is nothing but converting a username as well as password into a framework understandable format by using base64 crypto system. And after that, we were able to compare the username and password. And if you are matching, then only we can enter into our controller. Otherwise, it will be skipped at that particular point only. So we are having two advantages. One is physical validity of a token, as well as you can get the logs or everything in the application through log4j or some other thing around it. Okay. So at any point of time, what I'm trying to say is, which is encrypt the username as well as encrypt the password using base64 is the default standard. Okay, but where we can customize this also, base64 also, where we can customize this particular use case, but we'll discuss this customization in upcoming example. So as of now, what I'm trying to say is nothing but typically basic plus username as well as password with the encrypted string, that is called as a basic authentication. So we were able to see end to end with the ticket booking application with Postman as one of the editor or else browser as another editor. And we can go with the Angular discussion how to product these things in the upcoming sessions from Angular screen or from React. Okay.
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Actually, in some application, I see that they are using some bearer bearer cluster,
That is
something
a
like that.
JWT. That's a JWT, sir. It's advanced topic. After 5 classes, you'll come to know that, sir.
Okay.
Okay. Whenever I say basic, it's a basic authentication. Bearer, it's outside person. If it is developed outside of Spring Boot or outside of Java, then you can use bearer token. Inside base64, so that most of the people will follow base64 in conversion. Clear?
Yes, sir. Clear.
Yeah. Any other question, guys, so far? Everyone is clear, right? On basic authentication, username, password with in memory, and I hope everyone is clear till now.
Sir, that things with adapter configure adapter has been deprecated.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
it's deprecated, but we are going to write a code, sir. I mean, anything will work, even though, I mean, it's the latest version only that is deprecated. I will write some syntax may be different. I will write a code and I'll give it to you. Okay.
okay.
Yeah. It's a deprecated in the latest version, not in the previous version. I also didn't saw that it is deprecated till now. If maybe it's a 3.0, some new values came, I guess. Okay.
Sir, for the authorization, they are using is security filter chain. And
For
for the
authorization, HTTP security, they may be using HTTP filter chain.
but for authentication, what they are using, not able to
I'll
understand.
I'll 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 keep you posted actually. Okay. I will write a code and I'll keep you posted on this as of now. Okay.
Okay.
But still, if it is deprecated, you can test and you can work with your code, right? Maybe they introduced authentication manager builder of some other object, security object is some other object. I'll write a code and I'll explain you on that. Okay. Nothing to worry. Until I type this, I didn't saw that this is deprecated as of now. This. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And let me share the code, guys. Yeah. Yeah. Now let me upload the code. So topic in memory authentication with in memory authentication with basic auth. Okay, guys. Now our next topic is, after we are good with in-memory authentication, next topic is where we'll go with the drawbacks of this in-memory authentication is what? True drawbacks. First drawback, dynamic authentication, dynamic authorization is not possible. Am I right? What do you mean by dynamic authentication? What do you mean by dynamic authorization? At runtime, I want to change Naresh IT admin to guest role, Naresh IT guest to admin role. At runtime, I cannot do the change in memory authentication. What I need is I'll save my username, I'll save my password, I'll save my roller in the database rather than memory. I'll keep in the database. I will just write the code. Whenever it is asking my username, I'll give the username. Whenever it is asking password, I'll give the password. And whenever it's authenticating, authorizing, it will give the role name. So typically based on username and password and the role which is collected, and it is verified. That is the using of HTTP basic, but it is the in-memory authentication. But at runtime, if I want to change, like Naresh IT admin want to move to guest role, Naresh IT guest move to admin role. It is not possible. How we can do that? What is the thing? How I can do that? I need to stop my code. I can change admin to guest role, this one to admin role, so that you need to start again. So that is a compilation time authentication as well as compilation time authorization. But if I want to achieve dynamic authentication, dynamic authorization at runtime, I want to keep the user ID, I want to keep the password, I want to keep the role, everything in the, I'm keeping the entire things in the database. I'll handle everything. So that concept is called as dynamic authentication, dynamic authorization. That's a first principle where we are going to discuss. Okay. So again, it requires lot of interfaces, lot of like in this example, what we discussed, authentication manager builder, HTTP security object, web security configure adapter, as well as form login, HTTP basic. Now in upcoming sessions, we'll get some more internal details of dynamic authentication and dynamic authorization. Maybe tomorrow I will completely focus on theory. I'll explain the concepts of what is dynamic authentication, what is dynamic authorization, and I'll focus on this particular further thing afterwards. Okay. So I'll stop for today. Anyone, any questions as of now? Okay. Thanks everyone. Have a great day. We'll meet tomorrow. Thank you.